The forest was silent that night, covered in snow, cold and still. The wind moved slowly through the trees, whispering like a ghost. Caleb, a young man in his 20s, walked through the woods with an axe on his back and firewood in his arms. He was strong but tired, his breath turning into mist with every step. His small cabin was just ahead. A few minutes away, he had lived alone here for the last 2 years after leaving the city behind. He liked the peace, the quiet, the space to think. But that night, something was different. He heard something, a soft sound, like someone crying. It was faint but strange. It wasn't the sound of an animal, and it wasn't the wind. Caleb stopped walking and listened. His heart beat faster. The crying came again, soft, shaky, full of fear. He followed it, stepping carefully through the snow, past the trees, toward the sound. Behind an old fallen log, under a tall pine tree. He saw her, a girl, small and shaking, sitting in the snow with nothing to keep her warm. She was no older than 8, maybe 9. Her skin was pale blue, almost glowing under the moonlight. Her long white hair stuck to her face, and her eyes were large, too large to be human. She looked at him, afraid, but too weak to run. Caleb stared at her in shock. His mind raced. Who was she? What was she? She looked like a child, but not one from this world. But he didn't move back. He didn't get scared. Instead, he slowly took off his heavy coat, walked forward, and gently wrapped it around her. She didn't speak. She just kept looking at him with wide, shining eyes. Her body was ice-cooled, and she trembled with every breath. "It's okay," Caleb said softly. "You're safe now." She didn't answer, but her tiny hand gripped the edge of the coat like it was life itself. Caleb could feel how thin she was. Her fingers were bony, her nails chipped, and her feet were bare and red from the cold. No shoes, no gloves, no protection, whoever she was. She had been out here for a long time. Alone, Caleb looked around, expecting to see someone's parents, a ship, anything. But there was nothing. Only trees and snow. Silence and cold. He looked down at the girl again. Her eyes were closing slowly, like she was falling asleep. Caleb picked her up in his arms, shocked at how light she was, and began walking quickly toward his cabin. Inside the cabin, the fire was still burning. Caleb placed her gently on the old sofa and covered her with blankets. She didn't speak, but she looked around the room with tired eyes, like she was trying to remember something. He brought her warm soup, but she only drank a few sips before falling asleep. Curled under the coat he had given her, Caleb sat nearby, watching her, his mind full of questions. Where did she come from? Why was she out there? What happened to her? And most importantly, was she in danger? As the fire crackled and the wind blew outside, he noticed something strange. On her wrist was a small silver band. It looked like it had alien symbols glowing faintly on it. One of those symbols looked familiar, very familiar. Caleb had seen it before in a book, in a story, somewhere. But he couldn't remember where. Not yet. That night, he didn't sleep. He stayed close to the girl, adding more wood to the fire, making sure she stayed warm. At one point, she woke up and whispered something in a soft, strange language. He didn't understand the words, but they gave him chills, the way she said them. The sadness in her voice, it felt like a goodbye. He leaned closer and said, "What's your name?" She looked at him and slowly said, "Solna," then touched his chest and repeated, "You, Solna." He didn't know what it meant. Maybe it was his name in her language, or maybe something else, but the way she said it made his heart ache, and outside the cabin, far in the dark sky, something moved. A light flickered between the stars, then disappeared. Something or someone was watching. Caleb had no idea that by wrapping this lost girl in his coat, he had stepped into a story much bigger than his quiet cabin in the woods. A story that would take him far from Earth and change not just his life, but the future of two worlds. The next morning the forest was quiet again, but Caleb's cabin was not. The girl tossed under the blanket, whispering in her strange language. Her face was pale and tired, and she breathed like she had run for days. Caleb put more wood into the fire. Trying to keep the room warm, he watched her with worry, because he knew she could not stay hidden forever. When she woke up, she stared at him with wide eyes. She looked afraid, like she expected him to hurt her, but Caleb only smiled gently and said, "It's all right, you're safe here." He gave her bread and warm tea. She ate slowly, watching him as if she was studying every movement. She didn't trust easily, but something in her eyes told him she wanted to. As the day passed, she walked around the cabin, her small bare feet touching the wooden floor. She found a piece of charcoal near the fireplace. She bent down and began drawing symbols on the wooden floor. Caleb knelt beside her and watched. The symbols were round, glowing faintly for a moment before fading. They were not random. They were maps, patterns, maybe even messages. "What are you showing me?" Caleb whispered. She didn't answer with words, but she pointed toward the sky through the window. Then she drew a circle with 3 stars around it. Her hand shook as she drew. Caleb felt a chill. He understood only one thing: she came from far away. Later that evening, Caleb heard voices in the distance. He looked out the window and saw 2 black vehicles moving slowly down the snow-covered road. Men in dark coats stepped out. They carried strange devices and walked with purpose. Caleb's chest tightened. They weren't locals. They weren't here by accident. They were searching for something, or someone. He quickly grabbed the girl's hand. "We have to hide," he said firmly. She didn't argue. He led her down into the small basement under the cabin. It was cold and dark, but safe. He placed her on an old blanket and whispered, "Stay quiet." No matter what happens, her eyes widened. And she nodded. There was a knock on the door, heavy and sharp. Caleb took a deep breath and opened it. 2 men stood outside, snow on their boots. Their eyes were sharp and cold. One of them held a strange scanner. "We're looking for something," the man said. "Have you seen unusual activity around here?" Caleb forced a calm smile. "Just me. The woods are quiet." The men stepped inside without asking. Looking around, Caleb's heart pounded. Every creak of the floor above the basement felt like thunder in his ears. He prayed the girl would not make a sound. The scanner beeped once, faintly. The man looked around, then shook his head. "Signal is weak here. Let's check the next house." Without another word, they left. Caleb closed the door slowly. His hands shaking, he rushed back to the basement and opened the hatch. The girl was sitting quietly, her hands gripping the coat he had given her. She looked up at him with wide, scared eyes. Caleb sat beside her and whispered, "It's all right." "They're gone." She leaned against him, and for the first time, she let out a small sigh of relief. That night, as the snowstorm howled outside, she surprised him. She touched the silver pendant that hung around his neck. The old piece of metal was something his father had given him years ago. It had strange markings that no one could explain. Caleb always thought it was just an old relic, but when the girl touched it, her eyes filled with tears. She whispered something in her language, pressing the pendant against her forehead. Then she looked at Caleb and said one clear word. Home. Caleb froze. His pendant meant something to her. It was connected to her world. He didn't know how, but he knew this was no accident. She wasn't just lost. She was looking for something, maybe even someone, later that night. When she finally fell asleep, Caleb sat by the fire and thought. His life had been simple until now, just survival in the woods. Now he was hiding a child who wasn't human, a child others were hunting, a child who somehow knew the secret of his pendant. Outside the cabin, the dark vehicles returned to town. The men spoke in low voices. The signal is close. She's here. We just need to flush her out. Caleb didn't know it yet, but the real hunt had just begun, and by giving the girl shelter, he had become part of it. The storm passed by morning, but the silence that followed felt heavy. Caleb stepped outside his cabin and looked down the narrow, snowy road. The trees stood tall and white. But there were tracks in the snow vehicle tracks, deep and fresh. His heart sank. The men from last night had not left the area. They were still searching, inside the cabin. The girl sat near the fire, wrapped tightly in his coat. Her big eyes followed him everywhere. She didn't speak much, only whispered strange words now and then. Caleb had learned one thing, though she was afraid of the men in black. Every time she heard a car in the distance, she would shrink into the corner like a hunted animal. Caleb tried to act calm, but his mind raced. How long could he keep her hidden? The town wasn't far. People would start asking questions. Why had strangers arrived? Why were they scanning houses? And if anyone even guessed he was hiding the girl, both of them would be taken that afternoon. He went to the small local shop in town for supplies. The old woman at the counter, Mrs. Hargrove, gave him a sharp look. "Strange men asking about you this morning," she said. "Government type. They say they're looking for a lost child, but I don't trust them." Caleb's chest tightened. He tried to stay casual. "What kind of child?" Mrs. Hargrove lowered her voice. "Not the kind you or I have ever seen, Caleb. I've lived long enough to know when trouble comes walking into town, and trouble just arrived. Be careful." Caleb nodded quickly, bought what he needed, and left. He didn't want to linger. When he returned to the cabin, the girl was waiting by the window, her small hands pressed to the glass. She pointed toward the woods, drawing shapes in the condensation. Caleb looked closer and saw she was trying to warn him. She drew a tall figure with glowing eyes, then crossed it out with her finger. Her face turned pale. "Who are they?" Caleb asked gently. Kneeling beside her, she didn't answer with words. Instead, she took a piece of coal again and drew a circle on the floor. Inside the circle, she drew herself. Then she drew many figures outside it with sharp claws. She looked at Caleb with tears in her eyes. He understood she was being hunted. And not just by men in black coats. There were others too, maybe worse, that night. Caleb woke to a sound. It wasn't the wind. It wasn't the fire. It was a voice outside the cabin. A man's voice, calm but threatening. "We know you're in there. Give us the girl, and no one will be harmed." Caleb froze. His heart hammered in his chest. He looked at the girl. She was already awake, her eyes wide with terror. He placed a finger on his lips, telling her to stay silent. Slowly, he grabbed his old hunting rifle from the corner. His hands shook, not because he hadn't used it before, but because he knew this wasn't a fight he could win. The voice came again, this time sharper. "She doesn't belong to you, human. Hand her over." Caleb's blood turned cold. They knew what she was. They knew she wasn't one of them. He kept the rifle pointed at the door, but he didn't open it. He whispered to the girl, "Stay low, don't make a sound." The footsteps moved away after a while, fading into the trees, but Caleb knew it wasn't over. They would be back, and next time, they wouldn't just talk in the morning. A knock came at the door, not from the strangers, but from Mrs. Hargrove. Caleb opened it cautiously. The old woman stepped inside and closed the door quickly behind her. Her eyes fell on the girl, and she gasped. Covering her mouth, Caleb tensed, ready to explain or fight, but the woman didn't scream. Instead, she whispered, "So it's true. She's real. What do you mean?" Caleb asked in shock. Mrs. Hargrove slowly pulled out an old, faded photograph from her coat. It showed a tall alien woman with silver eyes, dressed in royal robes. And standing beside her was a little girl who looked almost exactly like the one sitting on Caleb's sofa. "This child," Mrs. Hargrove whispered, "is not just lost, she's royalty. She's the daughter of the matriarch, and if they catch her, it won't just be her life at stake, it will be all of ours." Caleb looked at the girl, who clutched his coat tightly. She was more than a frightened child. She carried a secret that powerful enemies wanted. A secret tied to her mother, the ruler of an alien empire. The search had only just begun. But Caleb knew now there was no going back. By saving her, he had stepped into a battle he did not understand. A battle that would soon reach far beyond his cabin in the woods. The cabin felt smaller now, not because of the space, but because of the secret it held. Caleb sat by the fire, staring into the flames. The girl, still wrapped in his coat, was asleep on the sofa. But not resting easy, her face twisted in pain. Like she was dreaming of something terrible, Mrs. Hargrove sat quietly in the rocking chair, holding the old photo of the alien woman, the one she called the matriarch. Her hands trembled. "I remember hearing stories as a child," she whispered, "about beings from the stars, powerful and wise. They spoke of a queen who ruled through peace, not fear. Her people said her child would bring balance." Caleb shook his head slowly. "And now that child is here, in my house." Hunted, Mrs. Hargrove looked at him with tired eyes. "That child may be the most important being in the galaxy, and she trusts you at that moment." The girl jolted awake, her eyes glowing faintly blue. She sat up, breathing fast. She looked at both of them, then held out her hands, her small fingers shaking. "No more run," she whispered, her voice rough. "No more hide." Caleb stared in shock. You can speak English." The girl nodded slowly. Her voice was low and broken, but clear. "Little, only little, I learn. You talk, I listen." Mrs. Hargrove leaned forward. "What is your name, child?" The girl hesitated, then touched her chest. "Lyra." Caleb smiled gently. "Lyra, that's beautiful." Lyra closed her eyes and raised her hand. She touched Caleb's forehead softly, and in that instant, he saw something, a flash of bright towers reaching into the sky, silver waterfalls, ships flying like birds above green fields, then fire, screams, soldiers breaking down walls. A woman with silver eyes holding Lyra close, whispering something, crying, pressing a glowing pendant into her small hand. Then darkness, running, hiding, alone. Caleb stumbled back. Breathing hard, "I saw it," he whispered. "I saw everything." Lyra looked down. "They came. Bad ones, they want throne. Mama send me far. Said find safe, find kind." Mrs. Hargrove's eyes filled with tears. "You poor thing." But Lyra wasn't crying. She stood up on shaky legs and pointed to Caleb's pendant again. The one he had worn since childhood. "This is from Mama. Same light, same mark." Caleb took it off and handed it to her. She held it close, and the pendant glowed faintly. She closed her eyes, whispering something in her own language. Then, to their surprise, the pendant floated in the air and lit up the room. A beam of light shot out and hit the wooden floor, showing an image in midair. It was Lyra's mother, speaking in her tongue. Her voice calm, powerful. The image flickered, then translated into English. To the one who finds my daughter, protect her. For she is the last light of our people. The enemies who hunt her will not stop until she is gone, or until they are. The light faded, the pendant dropped gently into Lyra's hand. Caleb and Mrs. Hargrove sat frozen. Lyra looked at them and said, "You help me, now I help you." Caleb smiled weakly. "Lyra, you don't have to do anything. You're just a child." She shook her head. "No child. I am matriarch's daughter. I have gift." Before they could speak, the windows shook outside. A low humming sound filled the air. They ran to the window. In the sky, a dark triangular ship hovered above the trees. Silent and menacing, Lyra backed away, whispering, "They find me." Caleb grabbed his coat and threw it over her again. Downstairs now. But this time, Lyra didn't run. She stood tall, her eyes glowing bright. "I fight, I protect." Like Mama, Mrs. Hargrove touched Caleb's arm. "She's more than we thought." They heard something hit the ground outside a scout drone. Metallic legs clicking on the snow. It scanned the house, a red light sweeping across the windows. Lyra stepped forward, raised her hand, and with a flick of her fingers, the drone froze in midair, then crushed itself into a ball of sparks. Caleb stared, stunned. What was that? Lyra breathed hard. "My gift. I stop machines only when scared or strong." Outside, the ship began to move away. But not because it gave up. Caleb knew it would return. Stronger, the girl he had found in the snow was not just a scared child anymore. She was beginning to awaken, and now, she was ready to fight back. Snow fell hard the next morning, covering the tracks around Caleb's cabin. But it didn't matter. The enemies already knew where she was. Lyra stood near the door, her eyes scanning the trees outside. She wasn't hiding anymore. Something had changed in her. She no longer looked like a lost child. She looked like someone preparing for war. Caleb packed a small bag with food, water, and tools. He looked at her. "We have to move. They'll be back, and next time, they won't just send a drone." Lyra nodded. "Forest safe for little time." Mrs. Hargrove stood by the fireplace, her face worried. "There's an old cave system in the North Ridge. My father used it during the war. No one goes there anymore." Caleb tightened his boots. "Then that's where we're going." They stepped into the cold, the snow crunching under their feet. Caleb carried the supplies. Lyra walked beside him, her silver pendant glowing faintly under her coat. The trees grew thick as they moved deeper into the woods. Caleb kept glancing up at the sky, watching for ships. Watching for machines. Lyra seemed calm, but Caleb could feel energy around her, like the air itself was bending near her skin. Hours passed before they reached the ridge. Hidden behind tall rocks was the cave. Dark and wide. Lyra paused before entering. She placed her hand on the rock wall. And suddenly, strange glowing lines lit up, running through the stone like veins. Caleb stepped back in shock. "What is this?" Lyra whispered, "Old place. My people came here long ago." Inside, the cave opened into a large chamber. Symbols glowed on the walls, old and beautiful. Lyra walked to the center and knelt, touching a small circle carved into the ground. Caleb walked around slowly, his flashlight bouncing off the walls. On one side, he stopped, frozen. His light had landed on something, an image carved into stone. It showed a woman with silver eyes, tall and powerful, holding hands with a human man. Below the carving were words in both alien script and English. "The child of both worlds will bring the storm and the peace." He stared at it, confused. Is this About Lyra? Lyra walked up beside him, her voice soft. Mama knew one day I'd need help, so she left Truth here. Caleb looked down at her. Lyra, who was the human in this carving? She pointed to the pendant around his neck. Him, he wore this, same as you. His heart skipped. His father had given him the pendant, said it was a gift from a friend long ago. Had his father known Lyra's mother? Before he could think more, a sharp noise echoed outside. A screech, metallic and loud. Caleb ran to the cave entrance and peeked out. 3 dark drones floated just above the trees. Red lights scanning the forest floor. A voice spoke from one of them. Deep and inhuman, surrender the air or be destroyed. Lyra walked up beside him, her small hands glowing with blue light. Her face showed no fear. No surrender, she said, then stepped outside. Caleb shouted, Lyra, wait. But she raised her hands, and the snow swirled around her like a storm. The drone shot beams of red light toward her, but they hit an invisible wall, crackling and vanishing. Then, with one sudden motion, Lyra opened her hands, and the drones exploded in the sky like fireworks. Caleb stared, speechless. The light around her faded slowly, and Lyra fell to her knees. Caleb ran and caught her before she hit the ground. Her face was pale, her energy nearly gone. I stopped them. But more will come, she whispered. He held her close. You were amazing, Lyra. But you need to rest. You're just a kid. No, she whispered. I'm not just a kid. I'm the key, Mrs. Hargrove stepped outside, her eyes wide with wonder. She has more power than I ever imagined. Caleb looked up at the sky. His jaw clenched, and now they know it too. Inside the cave, more lights began to glow on the walls, revealing a message written long ago. When the child awakens, the throne will shake, and the stars will burn bright again. Caleb looked at Lyra and whispered, We need to find your mother. Now. Lyra opened her eyes weakly. She will come when it's time, outside, far above Earth, in the cold silence of space. A massive ship moved through the dark. It carried warriors. It carried hope. And it carried a mother who would do anything to find her daughter. The fire in the cave crackled quietly. Caleb sat beside Lyra, watching her breathe. She was asleep again, resting after the powerful burst of energy that saved them from the drones. Her small hand still held the glowing pendant, and it pulsed slowly, like a heartbeat. Mrs. Hargrove brewed hot tea over the fire, her hands trembling as she stirred. I've seen strange things in my life, but this is bigger than any story I've ever heard. Caleb nodded, his voice low. She's not just a lost alien girl. She's someone powerful, someone meant to change something. As the wind howled outside, the cave began to glow again. Light flowed gently through the carvings in the walls, forming lines and shapes. Then, without warning, a soft hum filled the air. Lyra opened her eyes, calm and steady now. She stood slowly, walked to the center of the cave, and raised the pendant high. A bright beam shot upward, opening a circle of light above them. Then, a voice came, not through the ears, but into the heart. Lyra, my daughter, if you are hearing this, it means you have awakened. It was the voice of a woman, strong, warm, and royal. A figure appeared in the beam. Made of light, it was her, the matriarch. Silver-eyed and graceful, dressed in glowing robes. I am sorry I could not be with you. Enemies tore our home apart. They feared what you could become. What we could become together. The voice continued. Caleb stepped closer, watching the message unfold. The matriarch's image turned to face him, as if she could see him across space and time. To the human who holds my daughter's trust, you are not chosen by accident. Caleb blinked, shocked. The matriarch explained more. Long ago, I visited Earth. I met a man, your father. He was kind, brave. He saved my life. I gave him the pendant as a bond, a promise I knew one day our paths would cross again. Mrs. Hargrove gasped. That's how you have the pendant, Caleb. Your father knew her. Caleb's legs felt weak. He sat down slowly. All this time, I thought it was just a strange gift. The matriarch's image continued. Lyra is more than my daughter. She is the heir to the throne of Nuvante. A planet of peace if she falls into the wrong hands. Peace dies with her. Lyra looked up at the image with tears in her eyes. Mama, she whispered, you are brave. My little star, the matriarch said, you are not alone. Suddenly, the beam changed, showing a star map in the air. A red dot blinked rapidly, getting closer to Earth. Mrs. Hargrove stepped back. What is that? Caleb's eyes narrowed. That's her ship. She's coming. Lyra nodded. Mama comes to find me. But then, a second dot appeared on the map, this one black, and it moved faster, darker. The enemy follows, the matriarch's voice warned. You must be ready. The light faded, the cave went silent again. Lyra sat down beside Caleb, her hand finding his. You helped me when I was cold, when I was scared, she said softly. I don't forget. Caleb squeezed her hand. I'm not going anywhere. Lyra, I promise. Mrs. Hargrove looked at them both. When her mother arrives, everything will change. You won't be able to go back to normal life. Caleb nodded. I know, but I also know this: if I had to do it all over again, I'd still wrap her in my coat. Outside the cave, the sky above the forest rumbled. Stars shifted, and a distant glow appeared. Like fire behind the clouds, the ground trembled. Just a little, just enough. The girl was no longer alone. The mother was near. And war was coming with her. The sky over the forest lit up like morning. Even though it was still night, a great silver ship slowly moved through the clouds. Silent and massive, its smooth surface glowed with blue light, casting a soft shine on the snowy trees below. Caleb, Lyra and Mrs. Hargrove stood outside the cave, their breath frozen in the air. Watching it come closer, Lyra's hand gripped Caleb's tightly. Her eyes were wide, not with fear, but with hope. Mama, she whispered, but before the ship could land, the ground shook with a loud rumble from the opposite side of the ridge. Black ships burst through the sky like angry birds. They were sharp, fast, and full of shadows. The enemy had arrived, and they were ready for war. Get back, Caleb shouted. Pulling Lyra behind a large rock, Mrs. Hargrove crouched beside them, shielding her head. Dark drones flew out from the black ships, their red lights scanning everything in sight. Then the voice came again, cold and full of command. Surrender the child, or face total destruction. Caleb looked at Lyra. What do we do? Lyra stepped forward slowly, her small frame glowing softly. We don't run, she said. We fight. Caleb's heart pounded. You're just a kid. She looked at him with calm eyes. I'm more. Suddenly, the pendant on her chest flashed with blinding light, and a wave of energy burst out from her body. It pushed the drones back, frying their circuits and dropping them like stones in the snow. The silver ship from above responded. A new voice echoed in the air, strong and royal. This is the matriarch of Nuvante. Step away from my daughter. A tall figure floated down from the ship, wrapped in glowing robes, silver eyes shining like stars. It was Lyra's mother. Powerful and graceful, She landed softly beside Lyra and took her into her arms. "My child," the matriarch whispered, holding her tight. "You've grown strong." Lyra nodded. "Because he helped me," she said, pointing to Caleb. The matriarch turned her eyes to him. Her gaze was heavy, full of knowledge and memories. "You are the son of the one who saved me long ago," she said, "and now you have saved my daughter." Caleb didn't know what to say. He just nodded. "I did what anyone should have done." "No," she said firmly. "Most would not have." Suddenly, a dark shape moved fast toward them. One last drone, hidden until now, charged a red beam at Lyra. Caleb didn't think. He jumped in front of her, wrapping his arms around her, ready to take the hit, but the beam never touched him. Lyra's power exploded in a wave of blue light, stopping the drone mid-air, crushing it with pure force. The storm ended. The enemy ships retreated, broken and defeated. The matriarch raised her hand, and her ship sent a signal across the stars. "The air is safe," she said. The line continues. Mrs. Hargrove stepped out from behind the rock, her face wet with tears. "I never thought I'd see something like this in my lifetime." The matriarch turned to Caleb once more. "You have a choice," she said. "You can return to your quiet life in the forest, or you can come with us." Caleb looked at Lyra, then at the snow-covered trees. His cabin, his past, everything he knew was here. But something inside told him his place was no longer among the trees. "I don't want her to go alone," he said softly. "She won't," the matriarch replied. "She go with family." Caleb took Lyra's hand, and she smiled up at him. "You're my Solna," she whispered. "My shield." The silver ship opened its gate. Light pouring down like the morning sun, Caleb took one last look at the earth below, the trees, the snow, the quiet. Then he stepped forward as the ship rose into the stars. The planet below grew smaller, but something bigger grew in his heart: belonging, purpose. He had wrapped a lost girl in his coat one cold night, and now he was wrapped in something greater. A new beginning among the stars.